peeps, this is Lee the Drum here from Cariad. Today, ladies and gentlemen, what I'm going to do is to discuss recording drums at home. If that's something you've wanted to do but you're really unsure, then I hope this video will give you at least some understanding of what to do and make decisions yourself. Unfortunately, it's not a quick fix. This isn't a video where I can say, well look, if you do A, B and C, this is what I do. Ta-da, there's your answer. There are so many equations to think about, to consider on your recording from home, and we're going to discuss those with you today, so that hopefully by the end of this video, if you watch it through, you will really have at least an idea of where you're going to target. First thing to say is everybody's completely different. All of your circumstances are different, your budgets and so on. Everything is different for every person, and that's why you have to take advice but then make your decisions on it. There's 8 points in all, so we're going to consider things like your money. That's a massive influence on how you record at home. Your time, how much time you can afford to give to the project. Your room, your drum kit, your playing abilities and experience, your interface or mixer, for an example, and the kit itself. So let's take you from start to finish now then. Let's have a look at point number one. The biggest influence on you recording at home is going to be your money. So your money is a major influence. It influences what, where you can record, what quality drum kit, everything. So the first thing for you to do is to think about your budget. Say, right, this is realistically what I can afford. Can I afford $10 or $100? £10, £50, £100, £1,000. Consider where you are first. The next thing within that budget, consider, are you only doing audio or are you doing visual with audio? Because then you have to split your budget into two, and you have to consider how much for each. So to write your budget down and be honest and realistic with yourself and say, look, I can afford to do this, and then stick to those budgets to the best of your ability. So the next big thing is how much time you have, because time is money, money is time. Can you afford to spend all day recording and practicing and learning? Can you only afford to do that in the evenings? Are you working as well? So just have a consideration of your weekly plan of when you can commit to learn and when you can commit to do your trials, your experiments, etc. Because you're going to need time. You're going to have to experiment around and play with this, that and t'other and work out exactly what is best for you. Okay, so the first one was money. This one is time. They're the two biggest influences. If you've got no money at all and you haven't got a minute to spare, you're going to struggle to record anything. It's pointless spending a fortune on a load of equipment because you're going to record, but you actually find out that you got maybe an hour this week and then an hour in 3 weeks from now, then you're wasting your money against your time, aren't you? So you want to work out, have I got the time to do this project? How much money can I realistically afford to throw away in case the project doesn't work or sell on later? And you bring those two elements together. Then that opens up everything. So the next thing is your room. Where is it that you're recording? Is it a small bedroom, for an example, and you're stuck up in the corner? Is it a large room? Maybe a studio room that you have got? Is it a drum room outside? What's the shape of the room? So these are things that are really influential on how you record. Consider your room, play the drum kit within that room and see if there's any changes you need to make in the room first. The better you can get the input into the program that you're going to mix with, the better the quality going in. It's logical to say, isn't it, then the better quality you're going to get out, and also the easier. It's less repair work at the other end, so it's worth spending time on the room, check the sound, listen, do a bit of recording and think about the sound of the room. So now we're going to consider the drum kit itself. What drum kit are you playing on? How good is the drum kit? How big is the drum kit? Again, are you in a big room with a massive drum kit? Well, that's going to be an influence. Or are you in a small, dense room with a very small kit like this? Big kit, small kit, 3-piece, 2-piece. What style of music you're playing will sort of influence that sound as well. Gentle, heavy, you know, double pedals, single pedals, etc., how much you're trying to put into the audio all creates influences around what you're trying to do. So if you go electric, for an example, then you put your module, you run that into your computer, your PC and your DAW program. That cuts out a massive amount of hassle. But it's whether you enjoy the feel and the play of your electric drum kit. So electric is one way. If you're going for an acoustic drum kit, then again that kit in itself needs to be worked on. So try and get the cymbals to sound as nice as they can, as balanced as possible within the volume of the drums. Be realistic. You may have to influence how you play, which is what we're going to check on in a minute, to not overpower the cymbals against the drum kit within the room. You've got to think of the balances of your sounds coming away from that drum kit. That's very important as well. The next thing then is getting your drum heads and getting your kit tuned, as we call it, just tweaked in a way that it's got the best, warmest, nicest sound possible. If you're playing live often, and it's, say for an example, it's a small place and you're not mic'd up, then you'll often have your drums more resonant. Let them ring, let them chuck out there. You want to bounce because you've got to cut through other instruments. If you're being mic'd up in a larger place, you may want to tone down a little, certainly, so that it's not creating too much. But you still want that live feel. You still want the ambiance of the drums. But sometimes in a studio, they need to tone that down a little bit more. I wouldn't kill it. I'm not one of these that sticks moon gels and tapes and everything all over. However, you can hear some people, for an example, Alex Van Halen as a drummer, I think his Ludwig snare sounds fantastic, but it's heavily taped in a studio. So this is something you have to consider again. What room you're in, what kit it is, and how you're going to dampen the kit. You can only learn that by experimenting. There's no other way, because it's unique to your room, unique to your kit. So that's the next point. Consider the drum kit carefully and work through how you tune it up, how you set it up to get the very best sound again for the microphones to pick up. So let's now move on to the next thing, and that's you. Your playing, the way that you play your drum kit is a massive influence on the sound, possibly as big as the budget that you've got. If you're a complete novice to drumming and you've never recorded ever before, then you're going to find there are difficulties for you, because you're going to have to gain experience first. Some of the best drummers, or the most busy drummers if you like, for session work, are the most consistent drummers. And what they've done is they've spent the time sitting behind their drum kits where they know how much pressure to hit, for an example, on the cymbal compared to the snare. The brain has played enough times to know how much to balance between this strike versus the strike of the snare, whether to use the rim or whether to use only the head. For live, you may get a little bit of rim shot going to get a little bit of punch, but in a studio you may not. It might be too much for the microphone that you have got in place, so you play with a lot less, you see, central and sweet. So how you play, the aggression that you play with, or not aggression, whatever, within the style of music you play, is another influence. Consistency as a player is vital, because on your DAW program, on your mixer, when you hit that, it creates a pulse. Boop, boop, and the same there. So each time you do this, or the bass drum, you want, unless you choose to change the velocity, you want that consistency there. So you don't want this, for an example. One, you see, you don't want your personality going up and down like a yo-yo, and then your playing going up and down a yo-yo. You have to be very positive when you're recording drums to concentrate heavily on how you play. Now, 1, 2, 3, 4. Just that bass drum is constant. Same pitch all the time. Sorry about that. Same pitch all the time. All right. same, all the time. You don't want to be changing that at all, unless you choose to. A 1, a 2, a 3, a 4. Now there are slight changes. For an example, if you play that sort of a thing, a 1, 2, da 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 Of course you want you want feel, you want texture in your playing, but you've got to know where those textures belong. So again, there's a consistency within the recording. Your playing is absolutely everything at this point now. So you've got a budget together, you've got a little 3-piece drum kit, you've sounded out the room, you've got a nice feel, you've tuned up the drums, you think this is all fantastic, it's all coming together. Way, I'm excited. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. Then you've got to turn the mindset on. You're not live, you're not spinning your sticks, doing all this because you're in the studio. So what you've got to do is put that energy into the playing while being dead straight and concentrated. Do you see what I mean? So playing live and having a little mess around and whatever is one thing. Coming into a studio where they need a consistent workhorse, a good sound is another thing. Constant, and then maybe the hi-hat. So do you see how your experience as a player kicks in now? Because you may want to create sounds and feels within your playing that you haven't played enough of yet. So you can't get on the shuffle of the bass drum. You see, ba-dum-ba-da. And if you can't get that done, you're either going to change what you're playing or you're going to practice until you're up to such a place. So experience of your playing is another major factor for you. So the next big thing is the microphones. So if you go electric, then your microphones are in your triggers. So that's one avenue. You simply put them through, try and get a left and a right coming out of your module. But then you'd have to spend time on your module to try and create a panning system. Pan is to go left and to go right if you're not sure about that. So you may have tom to the left, floor tom to the right, cymbals to the panning slightly to the left, this one slightly to the right, and so on. So you've got to work out how you do. Normally a snare, bass drum, hi-hats are more down the center, and you could just broaden out the rest of the kit as you feel. So you may have to pre-program that into your module, and then from there you want a left and a right into the door program. So if you're doing it this way, the chances are you're only going to get 2 channels going in to the program that you do your final mixing on. And that's perfectly fine. But if you're doing an acoustic drum kit, now is the big one. You've got to start to consider how many microphones you're going to use. Are you going to, for an example, use just 2 microphones? An overhead could possibly be put at the front of the kit, coming over this way, directly over. It's your choice and you can mix, because there's 1,000 videos of 1,000 ways of doing this, 1,000 theories of all sorts of mixers. Some talk of phasing and how important it is that they're equal from the snare, etc. And then other guys have gone out and gone, no, I don't do that. I shove one over there and I shove one over my shoulder, coming this way. And they've got a different setup. There are measurements that a lot of people stick to, so have a look around. But a lot of that is down to listening first. Record and listen, and if it sounds awful, then you need to go back at it and gain a bit more experience, say on YouTube, to look at ideas of who's mixing in what way or miking up in what way. There's no option other than to try. Give this a try, give that a try, and then work your way through. So you may have just the 2 overheads. Or you might go to the other extreme where you've got 3 microphones on the snare drum, a top, a middle, a bottom. You've microphoned tops and bottoms of your toms. You've got 4 or 5 through your bass drum. You know, then you've got 2 overheads here. You've got overheads behind you to create an ambience from behind, ambiance. Then you've got your mics down low and away, which are your room mics, and then mics up high. I mean, you can end up doing 20, 30 microphones on this. Where do you draw the line? And that's why the room size, and so on, and your budgets come back into play. And we said, didn't we, that the money and the time influence everything you do. So if you're on a fairly tight budget, my advice is whatever you do, go small. Go to your minimal amount, maybe 2 microphones, which are overhead condenser microphones. Get them in play and you'd be surprised what sounds you can come out with. There are some seriously good, long-lasting recordings out there that were done with 2 microphones and they were huge hits. So don't worry about the obsession of so much technology and loads of the top end mics. Microphones can be expensive. The next influence on that is the quality of your microphones. Now, you want to get the best quality you can for the money you can afford. How many microphones you want to do? Start small. 2 microphones, even if you've got the full set, 2 microphones to start, then 3 and 4 and so on, because what it'll do is it'll teach you to treat the instrument as one. If you've got 2 overheads, you're not obsessed with the bass drum mic. You're not obsessed with trying to get that perfect and the rest of the kit is not there. You want that perfect thud. Don't go that way. Whatever you do, treat the thing as a whole instrument. And think, oh, do you know what? That's really nice, actually. They're a nice sound. And what that'll do is it'll teach you about the overall sound of the drum kit coming out. You'll get a feel for those 2 overhead mics that you won't get if you start off with 10 mics and then you're trying to think of everything. You know, it's too much for the brain, especially if you're inexperienced at this. So 2 mics to start. Then add a microphone into the bass drum and the snare drum. Maybe just those 2. And then if you wish to develop, once you've got used to that, then is the time to go to the next stage, and the next stage where you slowly add microphones, start moving them around. But start super basic to allow your brain to understand where you are first. Okay, so there's your microphones. You have to make the choice. You have to decide to your time and your budget. Don't go over either of them, guys, just for the sake of saying, I just want to see all these stems and all my drums, because it'll drive you to a point of insanity. You won't get it right, and then you'll feel fed up and you'll give up. Start small and grow. Now, the next thing is from the microphones going into the PC. You need something like an interface or a mixer, because the sound that comes from your drums that enters into the PC has to be translated. So you either need an interface like, for an example, a Zoom R16, which if you're on a tight budget could actually be really good. Or you might want to go to something like a Focusrite or an equivalent of. There's 2 points here I'd like you to consider for a bit of advice. First of all, you've got to use XLR microphones, XLR leads. They are the ones with the 3 pins. So you want to make sure you've got good quality XLR leads, the best microphones that you can get for your budget, and then take it into an interface that's the best you can get for your budget again, because that translator is key to getting that information through into the computer. Now this again, see, one overlaps the other. You might say, well, I've got a kit of 8 microphones, but I haven't got an interface. And then you go, oh, right, so you go to look for a price on an interface and you think, oh, they're not bad. And then you realise they've only got 2 inputs, because they predominantly for vocalists, single, solo artists. So for a drum kit, naturally you're going to need a minimum of 8 if you're going to start to open up your microphones. So you either go small microphones with a small interface to start, that's your initial budget, and then sell them on and grow as you develop your skills. Or you go with, say, 2 microphones, however, you put some money into the interface so that as you develop and grow, that's already in place. So I use, for an example, a Focusrite 18i20. It's the earlier model, but it's perfectly fine for me for recording at home. And if I'm doing basic stuff here in this room, I use the Zoom R16. That's for much more simple stuff. A quick review of a snare drum. etc., then the R16 is perfectly fine for that. You can go down the route of a mixer, mix the best you can with your headphones, whichever system you've got, and tweak your EQs. That's your top sound, your middle sound, and your bottom sound, the bass, the treble, and the center. Tweak them to feel the kit and do the best you can with that. But remember, then it's likely from that mixing desk you'll only have two outputs going into the DAW program at the end, which again is a left and a right. You're not going to see a string of stems with every microphone that you've got. So if I put 20 microphones around me today and I shove them all through the mixer, there's only 2 channels into the computer. And drummers are obsessed with, they want to see all of the stems because they want to experiment and play with it all. Remember though, go back to treat the drum kit as a single instrument. Don't try and treat it as individual instruments. Try and treat it as a whole. And that'll stop you being obsessive with each single part of your drum kit. So now we're into our last point. However, there is one other thing after this that's a good bit of advice for you. So we're now into our DAW, D-A-W, our DAW program. That is your mixer. So that means you have to have your Mac, your laptop on Windows or PC, whatever it is, to download a program so that when it's gone from the interface, it can go in. You can use, usually a lot of the interfaces, by the way, use like a USB lead, so it'll go straight in and you can record direct. With the Zoom equipment, for an example, you can put an SD card into that, record onto there, take that out, put it into a reader, and that will open up. You can use free programs like Audacity, Studio One. If you look up Studio One V5, that's version 5, they also do a beginner's one. It's called Prime, which is a free download. And then you can upgrade when you can to something called Artist, and then you can upgrade into the Pro. And that allows you all the plugins to do with EQ and so on. However, just to record your drums, I would say that the free Prime or the Artist version are probably enough for you. There's a great danger when we start getting into the mixing. It's again, the problem is, how much time have you got? How much experience have you had at this? And what's your budget? They're so important again at this point. But once you get into that, it can become a complete and utter obsession now, because there are so many equations and so many plugins that you can start to get fried. So people start compressing their drums really a lot because the world tells you to compress your drums, and you've got to research that. Then if you decide to record your drums and then add instruments in, like remote recordings outside where people are sending you their files and you adding it to the drums as well, that in itself then becomes another minefield. There's a thought in life called 10,000 hours, and to become an expert in what you do, or very much an experienced person, is 10,000 hours the brain requires to really get to fully understand everything. And you see why I say that you're better off starting small with 1 to 2 microphones with a simple DAW program. Just rely on the 1 to 2 stems, experiment and get the feel, and then add as you go. Because if you go the full hog straight away, best DAW program, best room, 20 million microphones, and you go the full hog, and then you shove them all in, it looks fantastic, you go, look at all these stems, look at this is brill. However, you've then got to deal with all of them, and then it starts to drive you insane. And one of the reasons why it drives you insane is this. I have here a sample drum from Lee the Spray, and you can see it's a bit like a salesman's Ludwig kit, isn't it? So you've got your silver, your green there, look, you've got your turquoisey colour, your deep blue and your red. So this is why now, while you're in your DAW program, this is the best bit of advice I think you can have. You now need to choose, while you're in your DAW program, the colour. What do I mean by that? Well, what sound are you going to go for? Are you after a short, sharp, punchy sound? Are you after a more open, big 26-inch John Bonham, 24, 26-inch John Bonham bass drum sound? Do you want loads of that reverb on your drums? Do you want them tight, clicky? You've got to make a choice. Obviously, the style of music you're playing is going to influence it to a degree. However, it's still an open door. You can do whatever you want to do. So I might like the silver sparkle, but you might turn around and say, no, I prefer the green sparkle. Well, who's right and who's wrong? Nobody. You prefer green, I prefer silver. Or the other way around. You've then got to say, this is the sound that I want to get out of my kit, and it'll be that. So I'm going for a red. Then you've got a problem. What shade of red? Because now there's another 1,000 to 100,000 shades of the red. How much sparkle do you want in this colour? Do you want red on red, red on black? Do you see what I mean? There's so many variants of colour. There's also so many variants of sound. And sound is like colour. It can feel like you're trapped in it because you don't know which colour to choose. However, it's also a beautiful thing because it's free expression. You can choose the sound that you want. Go for it. Make a decision of pretty much where you're trying to get and what sound you like, what sound influences you, and how you're playing. Because the playing that you do influences the sound massively. So once you've got that, go for it. But be humble enough for people to say, ooh, not sure about that sound, not sure about this. And that's when you start to listen to people's opinions, thoughts, not too much, because you'll have a million people telling you a million opinions, and again, it'll drive you crazy because you just don't know what to do with it all. But push towards something, and then once you've made that decision, let people's reactions influence you of whether you've got to be a bit more. Personally, with my videos, I'm trying to be a little bit more polished, a little bit more professional. My first ones were attempted to be a bit more goofy, you know, a bit more comical. So I'm trying to work out where I fit in as well. But you've got to make a decision, you've got to go for it, you've got to start recording, and then you've got to build up. So I keep coming back to the same thing. Pick a colour. Pick the simplest colour first. Don't pick the most complicated colour. Strip it down to a couple of microphones, a simple DAW program, start to record, start to enjoy it, have fun, and then add on to that. And then work your way through. Don't get bogged down with a million compressors and a million EQs and plugins. Don't go there. Forget it all. The more simple you keep your recording, the better it'll be afterwards. So I hope those points give you some indication of where to go. And I keep coming back to it all the time. My biggest advice to you, start simple, work your way up. But the choices you make are yours. What microphones? Are you going to go for Shaw, Behringers, or you know, Audix and Aston? There's so many companies that do so many microphones. Again, you can get bogged down with who to go where. Do you want to have all the same microphone manufacturer? Do you want to mix them? Maybe have an Audix on the bass drum, an Aston's over the top, and a Shure for the snare drum. That's where I've gone with it. So I mix in and match in to suit what I've been advised, if you like, are good microphones per instrument, or per part of the kit, I should say. And then don't forget, treat the drum kit as a whole instrument. Don't treat it as individuals. You will find without a doubt that if you work on your bass drum like this and tweak your bass drum forever and a day until it's absolutely perfect, and then you go into your snare and it's absolutely perfect, when you bring the instruments into that and you start playing, you'll think, oh, it don't sound right, it's horrible. Because what you've not done is you've not applied the drums to the music. You've only worked on each individual stem. Forget that. Create a nice sound, bring the instruments in, and then treat the drum kit within those instruments. Try and put your effects either on the whole instrument of the drum kit, on the DAW, so you put all of your stems together and then take them onto a bus on your DAW program, and then from there you apply your effects. Try and treat it that way the best that you can, and if there is an issue with one part of it, then yes, put some effects on that to clean that bit up. So take care, guys. Join us as a Patreon if you would be so kind, and also keep an eye out on what we do, because there's lots more videos. Take care. Over and out from Wales. Thank you very much. See you soon.